Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahushai, Bahasham, Bracha Kodash. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And today we're going to go into the book of Wisdom of Solomon, the 16th chapter. Therefore, by the like were they punished worthily, and by the multitude of beasts tormented. So therefore, the Lord punished them with the like creatures that they so desire to want to worship, and he tormented them with beasts, right, with the multitude of beasts. Instead of which punishment, dealing graciously with thine own people, thou preparest for them meat of a strange taste, even quails to stir up their appetite. So here he is comparing the contrast, right? Or sorry, contrasting between the treatment the Lord gave to the to the Egyptians and to the people of Israel. So here it says, instead of which punishment, so in instead of the punishment that the Lord punished the Egyptians with, when it came to Israel, he dealt graciously, right, with his own people, and prepares for them meat of a strange taste, which is talking about the manna from heaven. And then also, as it says, even quail to stir up their appetite, right? So that's what the Lord did, right? He gave us manna from heaven, and he also gave us quails, right? Which is going back to the wilderness. It says here, verse 3, to the end that they, desiring food, might for the ugly sight of the beasts sent among them. This is talking about the the Egyptians. So when it says they desiring food, it's saying basically like even when the Egyptians were hungry at the sight of the plagues that they were seeing and experiencing, it made them lose that desire to eat, right? So it says here, might for the ugly sight of the beasts sent among them, even loathe even that which they must needs desire, which is the food. Having, the frogs, remember the plague of the frogs, basically crawling up into everything. And then when the plague was over and they died, imagine the stench, or the lice, or the locusts. It says here, or even the plague, the Lord, I believe he plagued their cattle as well, if I remember correctly. But these suffering a penury for a short space, which is let's go into that word penury. Just talking about Israel here. Right, extreme poverty or destitution. So for temporarily, right, the Lord had it to where we were lacking food, or we experienced hunger. That's the penury that Israel suffered for a short space. It was temporary. Might be made partakers of a strange taste. All right, and that strange taste was the manna which the Lord gave us, right? And it was strange in the sense that it wasn't ordinary earthly food. So in actuality, right, when you go back up to verse 2, well, I mean, there you go. It lines up, right? The meat of strange taste and the partakers of the strange taste going into the manna. Verse 4, for it was requisite. Requisite means it was necessary. It was necessary that upon them exercising tyranny should come penury, which is we just read here, right? Extreme poverty or destitution. So who were exercising tyranny? The Egyptians over us. So it was necessary that it would come upon them, that extreme poverty or destitution, which they could not avoid. But to the Israelites, should only be shewed how their enemies were tormented. So to the actual Egyptians, they experienced this in the full force. To us, we only experienced a taste of it to experience, and to know how bad it really was for the Egyptians. That's the correlation that Solomon is drawing here. For when the horrible fierceness of beasts came upon these, they perished with the stings of crooked serpents. Yeah, they perished with the stings of crooked serpents. Or Salakia, let me read that again. For when the horrible fierceness of beasts came upon these, and they perished with the stings of crooked serpents, thy wrath endured not forever. And this is talking about Israel, right? So Going back to the wilderness, when you read, I believe this was in the book of Numbers, when the Lord had those venomous, because they're also likened on to being beasts. So when he had those venomous snakes start attacking Israelites, right, and started killing Israelites, it wasn't forever, right? He didn't have all Israel die, but they were troubled for a small season. It was temporary, that they might be admonished, having a sign of salvation, which was the lifting up of the brazen serpent, right? That those that would look upon it, would be healed, to put them in remembrance of the commandment of thy law. So it's kind of like saying here, the Lord, gave us a light little punishment, but it wasn't to our destruction and it wasn't permanent. It was temporary, but this was to admonish us, right? So that we wouldn't stray from his law. For he that turned himself toward it was not saved by the thing that he saw, but by thee, that art the Savior of all. So those that ended up looking at the brazen serpent, it wasn't the actual brazen serpent that healed them, it was the Lord that healed them. And in this thou madest thine enemies confess that it is thou who deliverest from all evil. From them, so in this that the Lord did, he made the enemies confess, and this is what the author, or what Solomon is about to talk about here. For them, the bitings of grasshoppers and flies killed. This is dealing with the Egyptians. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that they were having flies that were like biting them and they would drop dead, but this is more so from the lack of food, from the grasshoppers or the locusts destroying all their crops, or even infections, that they would get from these different bites. Neither was there found any remedy for their life. So there was no way for them to escape these plagues, the Egyptians, that is. For they were worthy to be punished by such, so they deserved it. But thy sons, not the very teeth of venomous dragons overcame. For thy mercy, and that's talking about the poisonous snakes. So thy sons, which are the Israelites, not even the poisonous snakes overcame us. So we weren't destroyed of them as a nation, that is. For thy mercy was ever by them and healed them. For they were pricked, that they should remember thy words. And this is like, when you go back to ancient Israel, a husbandman would have what is called a goad, which is like a sharp, the end of it is like pretty sharp, and they could prick, the ox if it was going astray, or if it wasn't moving in the way that the husbandman wanted it to go in. So likewise, the Lord pricked us, not to kill us, but to correct us, right? That they should remember thy words and were quickly saved. See, so the Lord, once again, it's not like he had this going on to where there was like 10 Israelites left. He delivered us quickly from it, that not falling into deep forgetfulness, they might be continually mindful of thy goodness. So the Lord did this to make sure that Israel wouldn't get beside themselves, because when you actually go back to the time of the wilderness, they were murmuring, speaking against Moses, speaking against the Lord. So he had to, throw these judgments out there to set them right, to set them straight, that they would be continually mindful of his goodness as well in the mercy that he showed us. For it was neither herb nor mollifying plaster, which is like ointment, that restored them to health, but thy word, O Lord, which healeth all things. See, so it was the word of the Lord, because looking up at the serpent, the brazen serpent, that wasn't like physically, you weren't eating an herb, right? There wasn't any like medicine being put on your wounds, but you were healed, which goes to show that it was the word of the Lord that did that. Verse 13. For thou hast power of life and death. Thou leadest to the gates of hell and bringest up again. So the gates of hell, which goes into the grave, if you lead somebody there, you put them to death. To bring them up again, you bring them to life. A man indeed killeth through his malice, and the spirit, when it is gone forth, returneth not. Right? So you die, and that's usually the way life works, right? You're not coming right back. It's not a video game. You're not respawning, right? Neither the soul received up cometh again. So once the spirit departs and goes to the spirit world, Under normal circumstances, it's not coming back into that same body again. But it is not possible to escape thine hand. See, so a man might kill somebody, right? And once that spirit leaves, it's it. That's it. It's not coming back. This man can't have access to this person anymore. But when it comes to the Lord, nobody can escape the hand of the Lord. You can't escape the Lord on the earth. And when you die, you're going straight to him. So you can't escape him there either. For the ungodly that denied to know thee, dealing with the Egyptians, were scourged by the strength of thine arm. With strange rains, hails, and showers were they persecuted. See, so they were scourged, they were punished by the strength of thine arm, which is the power of the Lord. But his arm also represents Yahushua, which you know is doing a lot of this damage too. In fact, it tells us in maybe this chapter, the next one, or the one after that, that he was that angel that leaped, that death angel that slew all the firstborns. With strange rains and hails and showers were they persecuted, that they could not avoid, and through fire were they consumed. And these are going into the plagues that the Lord was hitting the Egyptians with. And you can read about that going back to the book of Exodus. So they weren't able to escape these plagues as it was coming upon them, right? Hail mingled with fire, fire running through the ground, burning up, them and their crops. And so here Solomon goes into a bit more detail, right, of the actual how unnatural these plagues really were. For which is most to be wondered at. The fire had more force in the water that quencheth all things. So you had the fire that was lit ablaze in the ground. Let's actually see if we can go there. Fire. Yeah, there you go. Exodus 9 and 23. I'll start at 22. And the Lord said unto Moses, stretch forth thine hand toward heaven, that there may be hail in all the land of Egypt, upon man and upon beast, and upon every herb of the field, throughout the land of Egypt. And Moses stretched forth his rod between heaven, and the Lord sent thunder and hail, and the fire ran along upon the ground, and the Lord rained hail upon the land of Egypt. So there was hail and fire mingled with the hail, very grievous, such as there was none like it in all the land of Egypt since it became a nation. You see that? So going back to Wisdom of Solomon, verse 17, for which is most to be wondered at, the fire had more force in the water. So this fire that was burning, they didn't just burn on the land, but even in the water, it was burning. And this water, as it says, that quencheth all things, because that's the normal way of the normal way of nature is that water quenches fire. For the world fighteth for the righteous, meaning that the elements of the world the Lord used to fight on behalf of the righteous, being the Israelites, against the Egyptians. For some time the flame was mitigated, that it might not burn up the beasts that were sent against the ungodly. So the Lord sent beasts among them too. And here he's saying that the fire at certain points would die down a bit so that it wouldn't burn up the beasts that the Lord sent against the Egyptians, but themselves might see and perceive that they were persecuted with the judgment of God. So this was done so that they could understand that this was happening at the judgment of the same God they denied, right? That they said, who is this Yahweh that we should worship him, that I should obey him? That's what Pharaoh said. And at another time, it burneth even in the midst of water above the power of fire. So at sometimes the fire would calm down so that these beasts, could run amongst them and bring this damage. But at other times, the fire will burn so hot, even on water, right? In the midst of water, you have the fire still burning above. So if you imagine imagine you get set on fire, right? And you run and you try to jump into into the water, and you still burning in the water because the fire is still burning in the water. As it says, above the power of fire, because the average power of fire only burns enough until water. If you jump in water, it's going to cool off the fire. But imagine Imagine you're in water trying to go low and deep into the river and you're still burning. That's fire that's burning above its power, that it might destroy the fruits of an unjust land, right? Which also going into the crops of that land being destroyed by this fire. So the plagues of Egypt were more horrific than you would even think, when you read the book of Exodus. But you get a bit more detail here in Wisdom of Solomon. Verse 20, instead whereof thou feddest thine own people with angels' food. So here it is, the Egyptians suffered the loss of their crops, the fire burning even in the midst of water, the inescapable plagues. But on behalf of the people of Israel, the Lord fed them with angels' food, dealing with the manna, and did it send them from heaven bread prepared without their labor. So we didn't have to make the manna. It was already prepared for us. Able to content every man's delight and agreeing to every taste. So the manna tasted perfect for everybody. For thy sustenance declared thy sweetness unto thy children. So in providing for us, it showed how, sweet or how caring the Lord is to his children or to his people. And serving to the appetite of the eater tempered itself to every man's liking. You see? So you like it a bit more savory, or you like it, not too sweet, not too sweet, but like not too much salt, or whatever the case is. It tasted perfectly to everybody. But you have some people that like, their steak a bit more charred. Some like it just regular, well done. Hey, imagine you biting into the steak and it tastes perfectly for you. The salt is just right. Somebody has a very sensitive taste buds to salt, so they put very little in their food. Well, somebody else is not like that, but both can eat the same food and it tastes equally perfect for them. That's like how this manna was tempered to every man's liking. Verse 22, but snow and ice endured the fire and melted not. Right, going into the hail, that they might know that fire burning in the hail and sparkling in the rain did destroy the fruits of the enemy. Okay, so the Lord had it to where you had this hail. That's why we read in Exodus that this hadn't been the case before. You had this hail burning and the ice burning with the fire, and it wasn't melting. Okay, that they might know that the fire burning in the hail and sparkling in the rain did destroy the fruits of the enemies. Okay, so they would know that this was destruction from the Lord, but that the Israelites would be able to know that this was the destruction the Lord brought upon them. It was this fire that was mixed with hail that he used to destroy their land, right, and their crops. But this again did even forget his own strength, that the righteous might be nourished. So going into this fire and this hail, it forgot its own strength, meaning it abated so that the righteous might be nourished. Okay, that it wouldn't be too destructive to where it destroys everything, and then it affects Israel, because they were still in the land as well, though they were separated in Goshen. For the creature that serveth thee, who art the maker, increaseth his strength against the unrighteous for their punishment. And the creature is the creation. So that also includes fire, right? It includes hail. It includes elements that strengthened themselves. The fire burned hotter. The hail was harder, right? Against the unrighteous for their punishment, and abateth his strength. When you abate, you calm down, for the benefit of such as put their trust in thee. See, so it burns really hot for the unrighteous, but it calms down, it cools when it comes to being on behalf of those that trust the Lord. Therefore, even then was it altered into all fashions, and was obedient to thy grace. Going into the elements, they were altered into all fashions, so they were changed according to the will of the Lord, obedient to thy grace, that nourisheth all things, according to the desire of them that had need, that thy children, O Lord, whom thou lovest, might know that it is not the growing of fruits that nourisheth man, but that it is thy word which preserveth them that put their trust in thee. See, and then it also says that, in the Old Testament, that man would know that man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceedeth out of the mouth of the Lord. See, that is what preserved us, the word of the Lord, because in the wilderness we didn't have the crops and the food grown of the earth, but we were preserved by the word of the Lord through his manna. Verse 27, for that which was not destroyed of the fire, being warmed with a little sunbeam, soon melted away, right? Dealing with the manna, right? The manna that the fire couldn't destroy melted, right? It melted, it was warmed with the sun, right? But it would melt away. See, there was a certain time in which we would go and gather it, and then the rest would eventually melt. That it might be known that we must prevent the sun, prevent meaning to go before, right? To give thee thanks, and at the day spring pray unto thee. And I'll read this verse as well in the GNTD, verse 28. It says, this was to teach us. I actually start at 27. The food that was not destroyed by the fire melted when the first ray of sunlight warmed it. This was to teach us that we must get up before daybreak to give you thanks and pray as the sun comes up. Verse 29, because that would be when we would, get up and gather, the manna and then give thanks to the Lord. Verse 29, for the hope of the unthankful shall melt away as the winter's hoar frost, which is like a snowflake, and shall run away as unprofitable water. So that's, in other words, it's saying the hope of the unthankful is as though it was none, because it's not going to come to fruition. And that brings us to the end of the Book of Wisdom of Solomon, the 16th chapter. Lord willing, that was edifying to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Racha Kudash. Until next time, Shalom.